After being dropped off at the port in Malta by the wonderful Mariella, I hopped on the ferry and docked in Gozo 25 minutes later. I was greeted by Bert and the beautiful dog Penny. The day I arrived, it was very windy and the waters were rough, so I was lucky I could get on the ferry in the first place. Once I'd unpacked at Bert and Moyra's place, they took me for a drive. We stopped at the Basilica of the National Shrine of Tarpinu. Known as the Church of Miracles, it is decorated with many large mosaics both inside and outside, as well as 76 coloured windows to illustrate sacred themes. I loved being a passenger in Bert's car. I felt like I got to see all of the hidden treasures of Gozo, which I would not have known about otherwise. I also really loved joining Bert and Moyra on their walks with Penny. If you've seen my previous video, you'd know I love a craft village, but once again I was disappointed by the one here in Gozo. Almost everything was closed and there was no vibe. One Sunday in Gozo, Bert and Moyra had to go to Malta, which meant it was up to me to explore myself. I'd gone for a run and remember calling Dad as I struggled up the hills, telling him I would regret every single step. I had a destination in mind, but with no buses or cars around, I just had to keep moving forward. By the time I got up the hills to my destination, all my regrets disappeared. This was the Tal Mixture Cave, looking over Ramla Bay. This was probably one of my favourite parts of Gozo, and I look forward to going back there one day. I just thought this was funny, having an electric vehicle charging station in the middle of nowhere. Here I am just walking through the streets of Victoria, which is also known as Rabat, which is the main town in Gozo. I loved the narrow streets with the limestone buildings and seeing random dogs and cats everywhere. I wandered through the town park, which was nice, and it had a cute little book exchange library in the middle. Here we have some more Penny footage out on a walk. It's just too pretty, I couldn't not have these moments in the vlog. Bert drove me around to scout out the best spot for a winter swim. I decided this was the place, which I returned to a few days later. One thing about Gozo is that all of the cemeteries seem to be at the top of a hill. Every time we drove past one, we had a laugh, because all those people seemed to have a pretty good view, even if they couldn't see it. And around the cemetery, there always seemed to be a crazy road. Bert and Moyra took me to the Citadel, which is a historic fortified city in the middle of Victoria. I wanted to see the old prison, which operated from the 16th century until 1962. There were only 6 cells, and I was quite intrigued by the graffiti on the walls. I'm glad Bert never needed to go to prison, because I don't think he'd fit. This is the Cathedral of Assumption. If you looked up at the roof, it looks like there's a dome. It's actually flat, but the painting is an illusion because they couldn't afford to build a real dome in the early 1700s. Here is the view from the top of the citadel. We then went to my swimming spot. You can't really see in this video, but along the coast are 350-year-old salt pans, covering about 3 k's around the island. Swim time! The locals thought I was crazy, but the water was perfect. This is the inside of the bread-making windmill. Although it's no longer used for bread production, the 300-year-old building was a great place to learn about how the villagers lived, as well as the different trades and traditions used throughout past centuries. I obviously needed to indulge in a pastizzi while I was in Gozo. Moyra took me to the temples, which was a really interesting experience. They were built between 3800 and 2000 BC, which is a really long time ago if you think about it. These temples are even older than Stonehenge and the pyramids of Egypt. Believe it or not, this scaffolding is not as old as the limestone. I thought this was a bit odd. They used cow toe bones to carve each other's faces, like this. Before I left, I wanted to see the citadel at night. It looked totally different in the dark, and even a little bit spooky. This was my final day, where I went for my last run around Penny's go-to walking spot. Here I am pointing out all the cranes in the distance. It's really disappointing for the locals to see it change so much. Moyra took me to the rotunda of St. John the Baptist. It's the biggest church in Gozo, with the 3rd largest unsupported dome in the world. We took a lift to the top to take in the views, but it was so windy we didn't stay up there for long. We also walked around the city streets, and I enjoyed finding hidden treasures and little stalls with locals selling their art. There was no sleep for Bert and I, as he so kindly took me to the airport, literally in the middle of the night. My flight wasn't until about 6 AM, but when you're staying on an island, there's a little more logistics that we have to put into place, like taking the boat to the mainland, where the airport actually is. I can't thank Bert and Moyra enough for taking care of me, and more than a year later, I'm still so grateful. I can't wait until next time.